So we'd like to welcome our final speaker, Tom Szaky. He's CEO of TerraCycle, recycling visionary, and he's just come from a hellish-sounding flight from New York overnight. So still looks better than me, despite that. I had a good night's sleep. But thank you, Tom.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here today. So I want to tell you a little bit of background on TerraCycle in case you don't know our organization, but more importantly, I'm going to tell you about a new platform we launched just this past January called Loop. So there's a little bit of background. TerraCycle is now been around for about 20 years. We operate in 20 countries, and we have one central mission. You would view us as a waste management company, but our mission is to eliminate the idea of waste. And what we've done for those almost 2 decades is operate national platforms to be able to collect and recycle those waste streams that are today not accepted in local council or municipal recycling platforms. Everything from complex items like cigarette butts or chewing gum, dirty diapers, and other complex items, all the way to simpler ones from chip bags to cosmetic waste, toothpaste tubes, and so on. We also focus on how do we integrate unique waste streams back into consumer products, like famously, for example, ocean plastic into both Head & Shoulders, Fairy, Herbal Essence packaging, and others coming soon, as well as other unique waste streams like festival waste into deodorant sticks and so on. So in our core, we are all about how do we recycle and how do we increase the use of recycled content, which will echo, of course, a lot of the commitments many organizations, some of you've heard from today, have made into the future. But we asked ourselves just 2.5 years ago or so, how do we go one step deeper? How do we think about trying to solve waste before it even becomes waste? And that's what led to this new platform called Loop, which was actually announced at Davos this past January. One of the exciting things about this press conference for me, in addition to fantastic global leaders from the CEOs of P&G and Pepsi, we also had the global leader of Greenpeace on stage with us, sharing in this announcement, which was wonderful to see both sides of the table, the NGO community and the business community, agreeing on this platform. Now, just to give you a sense of where this is today, this map shows you in dark gray where TerraCycle operates, and then in blue where we operate with our global foundation. Loop has started in middle of May with Carrefour in France, then a few days later in northeast of the United States with both Kroger and Walgreens as the key retailers. You'll see it launch in end of January, early February with Tesco in the UK, then in April with Loblaw in Canada, and then launches in Germany with a major retailer here that we'll be announcing next month, and then the biggest retailers in Australia and New Zealand. And one of the themes you'll hear is that it's all the global expansion of this platform is predicated on having a key retail partner. Loop very much is an engine. It's an engine for consumer product companies to develop durable, refillable versions of their products, as well as an engine for retailers to be able to embed that into their e-commerce and physical stores. But I want to take a back step a little bit before going into what we've learned and how it works to just show you how we got to this idea to begin with. So, I have written a number of books on the topic of garbage. I'm fascinated by garbage. I think it's one of the most interesting things out there, yet one of the least studied ideas as well. And if you think about waste, you know, the idea of waste, the modern concept was really invented in the 1950s, which means it's only been with us for about 70 years or so in this modern way. So then the question is important to ask, what was life like in the 1950s and before? And of course you have the iconic milkman example, but it wasn't just milk, it was the fact that we mended our clothing, we cobbled our shoes, we prize this idea of durability in a big way, and we're very comfortable with objects lasting a long time and going around. But something I think, you know, very important but less noticed was the economic principle behind the scenes. You know, in models like this, the owner, in this case the milk company, would get back the package in the end and would retain ownership on it in the end of the cycle, which means they would view it as an asset. And then they were financially motivated to make that package long-lasting and durable. Then in the 1950s, this came about. And this, by the way, in the 1950s was a positive photo promoting the benefits of disposability. We could look at this photo as a horrific photo today, but it's important for us to acknowledge why it was so positive, and that's because disposability brought about unparalleled convenience and affordability, to the point where we still vote for it multiple times a day today. But a strange thing happened. The package became the property of the consumer, and as such, an cost of goods sold to the manufacturer. And this is really strange because who here wants to actually own disposable packaging when there's nothing left in it? And yet we do. And so that's a really strange principle, to own something we don't want to own very quickly. And in fact, 99% of what we purchase falls into that category of things we don't want to own after a very short use. Only 1% goes beyond that. But again, a strange thing happens is the economic principle, and when manufacturers view the package as a cost, the goal is to reduce the cost as much as possible. So here's just an example with one of our partners. This is PepsiCo, who's one of the founding partners of Loop, just looking at packaging progression, moving from where the company began at its genesis in refillable bottles, and moving towards this idea of how do we look at major cost reduction to things like multi-layered laminates or monolayered in the end. And this brings about two massive virtues. One virtue is cost reduction. It democratizes the product, which is wonderful for consumers, gain access, but it also is way less material use. That pouch is about 97% less material than this bottle, which is an absolute, valid, unquestionable sustainability benefit. But there's two unintended negatives that have occurred. This line here shows you the actual rate of reuse or recycling. This is for US data on all these pack forms. And the reason recycling crashes down as you go from premium packaging to lighter packaging is there's less profit for waste management companies to be able to get when they go collect them, to the point where a pouch would cost you more to collect and process than the results are worth, which is why it's not recycled today. The other negative is when consumers are asked which of these packages delight them the most or delight them the least, they typically will say this is the most delightful packaging, and it progressively gets worse as you go down the spectrum. So the unintended negatives are consumer delight going down and the waste crisis increasing simultaneously. So the question statement for Loop was this: how do we solve the unintended consequences of disposability, waste, and lower consumer delight, while maintaining the benefits, which is convenience and affordability? And the key learning wasn't anything new. It was simply borrowing from the past to say, well, if consumers don't really want to own these packages after the content is finished, let's not have them own it and switch ownership back the way it used to be. Now, these numbers are just placeholders to protect the actual numbers, so please don't put too much weight into the actual numbers. But we here show you, say, Unilever's deodorant stick. This is Axe, and why this was picked is because that deodorant stick is not recyclable for 4 reasons. It's black plastic, it's multi-polymer, it's contaminated with deodorant, and it's small, which many MRFs or recycling centers will skip over. So many major, profound design issues to design it into recyclability. And the entire cost of that is embedded into the price of the deodorant. Yet, does anyone want to own this when there's no deodorant left inside? This is the new Unilever deodorant stick. This is shipping in a few months from now, made from stainless steel exclusively for Loop. It's beautiful. I would argue the most beautiful stick deodorant package ever designed. I am biased, by the way. But it's much more expensive to do that. Now, what goes into the price of the deodorant isn't the entire package, because you won't own it in the end. It's instead the depreciation of the package and the cost of cleaning. Now, it's not to say those become equal, but they become similar, which allows the price of the product to be similar, which is very important for consumers. And that enables something very special, which we call durable design. Durable design, it enables the product to be reusable, which in most cases, not all, but in most cases is significantly better for the environment. It is also, but it allows more, and something that's actually more important for consumers than sustainability, is it allows unparalleled design and features to be enabled that were never possible in disposable packaging because the budgets didn't allow it. Let me show you some examples. This is, for example, Procter & Gamble's laundry detergent. Here is Ariel in US Tide, now in refillable stainless steel packaging. Consumers have already responded here saying that they just love the beauty, they display it, and when this product is ordered, 55% of consumers order it on auto replenishment, which means once they order, that's all they're going to get. It just keeps going around and around. This is, for example, Nestle's Häagen-Dazs in Loop. And here, Nestle did a beautiful job in focusing on the new features of packaging. It's a funny story, by the way, but anyone want to guess where the average American eats ice cream in their home? Just for fun, anyone? Sorry? Where in the house? It's not intuitive, not the kitchen, not the dining room. Where? In bed. It's actually #1 place to consume ice cream, and the average, this is 3.5 servings, but of course the average consumption is the whole thing. And so what the problems that creates is the #1 consumer issue in this type of product is your hand gets cold, because the normal coated paper packaging will transmit the heat poorly. It also melts in a bad pattern. It melts from the outside in, so you get a ball of ice cream floating in ice cream soup at the end. The package doesn't become so beautiful by the time you've consumed it. This, because it's 2 layers of stainless steel, solve every one of those profound issues in ice cream. The outside is warm while the inside is -18 Celsius. It melts from the top down. It melts over an extended period of time, in fact about the length of the movie you're watching while you eat the whole thing. And the inside is ultra concave, so you can get every last scoop of ice cream out. These may seem like little changes, but it's actually quite profound in ice cream, and of course it's also fully reusable. This is actually rated to do 100 uses before it needs to be recycled. All the way to something like Clorox with wipes, to this is engineered plastic with Cascade, Procter & Gamble again, where what we've been seeing here is that consumers, there's 2 interesting learnings that have come out. One is that they love the design so much, it's moved from being put in the closet in your kitchen to proudly displayed. That's one really interesting piece. And the other is that it's now appealing to consumers that were most focused on eco-friendly detergents but wanted the performance of Cascade. With the reusable packaging, the consumer gets both and migrates over to Cascade. And there's so many examples. This, I'm going to play this video. This is Shell motor oil. This will be shipping, I'm going to try it one more time. Let's see, we'll try like this. This will be shipping in November, I believe, in France, and then in January in the UK. This is for motor oil lubricant. And here, you know, the consumer is mostly male, who is a demographic who doesn't care as much about the environment as women do. And so, you know, you would maybe come to this because you want the most beautiful motor oil container in your home, and then isn't it nice that you can put the used oil into it, send it in, the oil gets recycled, and the container gets reused. This is stainless steel as the material, and you'll notice there's no printing. The artwork is just embossed into the container. Whether it's companies like Coca-Cola coming back to reusable bottles, this is now in Carrefour, the first time you can get reusable bottles in this brand, all the way to founding partners like PepsiCo, not just looking at reusable packaging and beverage, but also bringing that over to a food category. Really thinking about this idea of simple, beautiful, long-lasting design. It could be startups. This is a small French company using stock durable, and we wouldn't call it packaging, containers. There's a whole ecosystem of containers out there that have the ability to keep going around. All the way to Unilever with mayonnaise or salad dressing with ranch. Even looking at counter-worthy design. This is Unilever with 7th generation, focusing on how do you make that hand soap as beautiful as possible, because in the United States, I think the data is probably similar here, 40% of people who buy liquid soap pour it into a different container when they get home. So 40% of people discard the disposable package and pour it into a more beautiful one. Why don't you just provide it to them in the most beautiful one to begin with and maintain branding, maintain the equity versus take that away? It could be, for example, this is Mondelez doing Milka. Now this is an interesting example because it's moving from a flexible into, in this case, a alloy container. We're seeing the popular materials being alloys, aluminum and stainless steel, glass, and then engineered plastic. And what Milka did here really beautifully is they really embodied the idea of design to create different versions of the container. So the same content is inside, but the container is what is being flavored. And you'll see other deployments with them as well on this platform coming up. Another thing we noticed is that retailers, Carrefour, Tesco in Europe, and the German one will be announcing very soon, and American retailers, they have big assortments of private label products, but the private label companies don't have the ability to create the type of innovation you saw from Mondelez or Pepsi or P&G and others. And so what we look for there is what we would call plug-and-play reusable packaging. These are all packages that have had no design changes at all, but now go to reuse. And that was never available for them before, and that's usually restricted to high-quality glass packages. But then when you get a brand involved who really cares about one category, like Le Sur in France, this is what olive oil packaging ends up looking like. So it's a beautiful role between private label and brand. And this gets me to the power of design. This is, for example, Pantene, shipping now in the United States. And an interesting example here is usually conditioner sells twice as well as, usually shampoo, sells twice as well as conditioner. So a retailer sells two shampoos for every conditioner. In this platform, they're selling exactly at the same pace, which makes no sense, except until you ask the consumer. And the consumer says, well, I buy them together because they look good together. Crazy, but that's just now matched shampoo and conditioner sales. We'll see how fast it moves, but how powerful design is unbelievable. But within design, when you move to durable, suddenly new rules start emerging. For example, the idea of designing with aging gracefully, because this bottle will go from bathroom to bathroom to bathroom to bathroom. So one of the things we try to teach our partners is this idea of designing with aging. This is not a Loop idea, but it's a case study we use where Puma created a shoe where they impregnated wax logos into the shoe. So when you buy it new, you don't notice it. The moment it gets dirty, that's when the logo starts appearing. And that's an example of aging beautifully. You want the shoe to be dirty versus the opposite. So this is an example of what Pantene may look like, or this is a coffee cup doing the same thing, where you only glaze certain aspects, and as you drink a lot of coffee, a pattern will appear for you, aging beautifully. So this is what Pantene may look like next year, and what you're noticing they're doing here is, the logo would come up here, but the artwork is not printed. It's 2 layers of metal, because the outside layer will attract scratches faster than the inside layer, and as it goes from location to location, bathroom to bathroom, it will increase the contrast ratio through the selective scratching versus the whole thing scratching at the same pace. And this is what we've noticed. Here's Unilever with luxury skincare now in refillable glass bottles, but here is what it's going to look like next year. Just as reusable, but look at the beautiful upgrade of design. Or JDE with instant coffee shipping right now in France in refillable glass, but this is what it's going to look like next year. And so we're seeing this huge adoption of this idea of beauty being so important because, look, my job, my whole goal is how do I move more consumers to a more sustainable lifestyle? But not everyone cares about that. But everyone cares about things all consumers care about, which is price, convenience, and the quality of that object. So today, I'm going to show you one other example. This is the oral care category. P&G first entered it creating mouthwash. Did phenomenally well. Already sold out this particular product. People loved it. People who never had mouthwash started using mouthwash. Then Unilever came in with toothpaste. Here's a good example where a tube is not reusable today, so they had to move to a glass jar. This actually forced them to reinvent the content to be single-dose dehydrated tablets because paste wouldn't function well in a glass jar. And then P&G created, I think, one of the most incredible products in Loop, which is this toothbrush. And this started asking us the question around content. So the package for this toothbrush is like a sunglass case. It comes back as washed and reused. But the brush is content. It's not a package. So the rules we made is that if the package, if the content cannot be recovered, like orange juice or laundry detergent, we have no point of view. But if the package or the product can be recovered, like a toothbrush, there's really 2 components. There's components that are reasonable to reuse, like the bottom, which is made from alloy, and there is a product where the content is unreasonable to reuse, like the top of the toothbrush. No matter how well I cleaned it, no one would be comfortable. So when this comes back, it separates. The bottom goes to reuse and the top goes to recycling, making it, I would argue, the most eco-friendly toothbrush in the world today, in a manual toothbrush, by the way, most eco-friendly and the most beautiful simultaneously. And I think that's the key we need to think about in sustainability, is make it about the future of how we consume. So manufacturers today have to design into the principles of Loop, which have been helped with the World Economic Forum. 10 different NGOs have signed off on this, as have about 30 corporate members, where the package must be cleanable. That's a big health and safety question. It must be durable, which is defined as 10 reasonable cycles or more. And it must have a strong life cycle analysis, and a big part of that is that it has to be recyclable back into itself at the end of life. Not recyclable into something else, but back into that exact same package form. And the thing I'm so excited about is usually the waste management industry has only the opportunity to evaluate packaging after it's been created, after it's in the supply chain and it shows up in the recycling bins or the waste bins. Here we have the profound honor that companies are paying attention and designing into the rules, in this example, that the waste system is setting. So no package or product can come in until it hits the guidelines so that it can easily go into reuse very simply. The final thing is, how does this come to life for consumers? So it's embedded into retailers. You heard some of the examples already, either into their digital e-commerce stores or their physical stores. You will see a loop section in the store or online of all these products, hundreds and hundreds of them in all sorts of FMCG categories. You buy whatever you wish, like normal. You pay a similar price for the content and then a price for the deposit to securitize the beautiful package or the beautiful product. You then use it like normal at home, and when it's dirty, finished, you don't sort, you don't clean, you throw it all into a bin. If you bought online, that bin then it's picked up from your home, a direct home pickup, or if you bought in store, you have the opportunity to take it back to any participating store. It doesn't matter where you bought it. That comes into either an active or passive reverse vending machine, where then you get your deposits back. We take it and run the garbage function, which is sort it, store it, clean it, and then provide it back to the manufacturers, who refill it, and then around it goes again. So it's been a really exciting adventure, this whole loop story. The whole thing from concept is 2.5 years old. The first time we ever thought about it was 2.5 years ago. So it's amazing to see now almost every major manufacturer participating in some capacity, and hundreds of products going in an incredibly fast pace from concept to in market. The average loop product is 12 months from ideation to shipping with these large manufacturers. So hopefully that gives you a little taste of how we look at the world of waste differently, and thank you so much for your time today.